everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayne. I write romance and romantic fiction, and today I'm talking about two romance books that I finished recently. They are the first two books in the Skyland series by Kennedy Ryan, Before I Let Go and This Could Be Us. The first one in the book is Before I Let Go, and first off, just look at that cover. The cover is absolutely gorgeous, and so is the writing in this book. Let me give you a quick synopsis first before I dive right in. So this book is about our two main characters, Yasmin and Josiah Wade. They're a divorced couple. They were so in love with each other and married and had two children. And then something happened that just pulled them apart. But they're still very much a part of each other's lives because they own a business together and they're co-parenting their kids, and they keep being drawn back to each other even though they're trying to move on from the divorce. And this book, I would say this whole series really has kind of a crossover into women's fiction because while there is a central romance and a central couple and a love story and an HEA, the stories also deal a lot with some other really heavy topics such as loss and grief and heartbreak and depression. So this story, I'm realizing, I went back and looked at all my notes. I have a book journal, and I take notes in my book journal as I'm reading. And when I went back and looked at my notes, I realized, I went through some things of my own just reading these books. Like, I feel like I processed a lot of stuff just reading these books because healing is a huge theme in this story. Healing, overcoming loss, overcoming grief. And also, the other thing that I thought was just amazing about this book, which maybe it's just been a long time, maybe times have changed, where there's a lot less shame around this feeling. Our main character went through such a depression. So the story starts kind of when she's on the other side of this, but she had gone through a depression that was so persistent and severe that she thought maybe she didn't want to be here anymore, or that everybody would be better off if she weren't here anymore. And I think that feeling, or we're in a place now where there's less shame around having those kinds of feelings. And that was one thing that was just so really deep and amazing about this story. It's kind of funny because there is one scene, so getting therapy and getting help and taking care of yourself and going through the actual process that you need to go through in order to grieve, including taking time for yourself, including taking care of yourself. Those are really heavy themes, strong themes in the book. And it's kind of funny because there was this one scene, and this isn't a spoiler, but there's this one scene where the main character, Yasmin, is talking to her therapist. And her therapist says to her, when are you going to decide to, she says something to the effect of, when are you going to decide to forgive yourself? And when I read that, it resonated really hard because I had actually just seen my therapist that day. And she said something kind of similar to me. I know that she's talked about forgiving yourself, but I think she might have said that day, when are you going to stop blaming yourself for things that were hard enough without you thinking that they were your fault? And I was really grappling with that and thinking about that, going through loss and going through heartbreak in and of itself is hard enough without blaming yourself. And I don't know why we as people tend to do that, blame ourselves for things. I think maybe it's a desire to control or prevent things from happening again, but I think sometimes we blame ourselves as a way of thinking that we actually had control over the situation. And it's really hard to accept that something heartbreaking happened and there's nothing you could have done about it. Who the heck wants to believe that? So I think that reading this book and also kind of going through it at the same time with my own therapist really just hit with a wallop, like, oh, let's be a little easy on yourself, because it is really difficult to go through something and to recover from something without also just continually blaming yourself. That is one of the things that was just so amazing about this book. The other piece of this is that the other character, the other lead, Josiah, is pretty much like I don't need no therapy kind of person. And this book deals with that and really, I think in a very mature way, kind of shows that no, everybody needs to have somebody that they can talk to about the ish that they've gone through. And I just love that. I also want to read, because I bookmarked this when I was looking at my notes. This is an example of Kennedy Ryan's beautiful prose in her books. This is a line where Josiah is looking at his wife. I think they're doing a kid drop off. And so he's at the house and she's in her like workout gear. I think she has just finished working out. And he's describing her. And this is what he says. She's changing, aging, but to me, only getting better. Like God looked at the feline flare of her cheekbones and the tempting pout of her mouth, the sultry dark eyes flecked with gold, and said, "You think she looks good now? I'm just getting started." Oh, I'm actually tearing up reading that line again. It's just so beautiful, and you can just tell how much he loves her, even though he's heartbroken. So that is Before I Let Go, the first book in the Skyland series. And then the second book is also a gorgeous cover. I mean, look at that. This Could Be Us. This follows one of the friends in the friend group. I guess I should have said earlier that there are 3 friends. So the series is a trilogy and it follows each of the 3 women in the friend group. And the second book is about Soledad. And she's going through a slightly different situation with her husband in that they're married, but she finds out something about him that completely destroys everything she thought she knew about him and destroys their marriage, honestly. And her book is also pretty deep, not as necessarily quite as what she's going through isn't necessarily as soaked in like loss and grief as the previous book, but she's going through the loss of the life that she thought she was building. She's going through the loss of a relationship, and she's going through loss of her partner in that he turned out not to be who she thought he was, and their marriage was not what she thought it was, and she was putting all of this time and energy into it only to find out that he didn't value it and it was for nothing. And so she's having to start over on her own with their kids as a single mom, and that is when Judah enters the picture. And the conflict for them, well, there's a couple things. One of the conflicts is sort of Judah's role in what's going on in her life to begin with. And also, because of what's happened, Soledad is really determined to figure out how to live life on her own, because she had done everything for her husband and for the marriage, and it was for nothing. And, he did a number on her self-esteem and her self-confidence as well. And I love how the book delves into, even when you know better, like you can tell yourself intellectually, I'm a worthwhile person, I'm a worthy partner, I deserve love. But if you spent years emotionally entangled with somebody who made you feel less than and not worthy, that can really get in to your psyche. And it takes more than just telling yourself, I'm worthy and I deserve love. It takes more than just telling yourself that. You have to really work at it. It takes time for that to really get in, because all of the other stuff, somebody telling you that you weren't worth it, somebody that you were living with and intimate with, really can get under your skin and get into your psyche. And so she is really learning how to truly love herself on her own, love herself without it being something that a partner tells her. She's telling herself. And also learning to trust herself after having been betrayed by somebody that she thought was trustworthy, which also resonated with me. Let me see if I can find that line too. I don't know if I bookmarked it. I don't think I did. Hold on. It just also was something, again, that I was going through with my own therapist about how do you come back from... Here it is. The fundamental question becomes not, can I trust another man again, but can I trust myself? And that is it. Can she trust that she's not just doing the same pattern again? Can she trust that this time she's right about her feelings? Can she trust that she's not just wanting this man to be the new one because she's alone and struggling? And that is very real. I think that sometimes maybe somebody who is pursuing somebody and is coming up against that sort of what is called the I'm an independent woman wall could really benefit from taking a step back and realizing that that wall is not designed to hurt somebody. It's designed to, it goes up because you're trying to protect yourself. And I think that it's so easy. Well, first off, you're just like, you don't want to go through that again. And I think that women in particular, but probably all of us, get bombarded with all these messages. I mean, it's human. It's a strong human desire to find other people that see you and that connect with you. And it's a strong human desire to bond with somebody else and become a team and, make it in the world and have that special someone that loves you for who you are, that sees all your special gifts that maybe not everyone else does, that you can share the highs and lows of life with. That's such a strong human desire. But because humans are flawed, we can get into relationships with people who aren't good for us. And that causes another wound, right? And then it comes to, oh, well, I need to learn to be good on my own. I need to learn to love myself. And I need to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. And I need to learn to provide for my family and take care of myself and be good just being me. And all that is true. And yet, those can really conflict with each other. The desire to be independent and the desire to be with someone else is a constant sort of negotiation and evolution. And I think this book really is an illustration of what that can look like. So, and this book was a little bit more of a romp. There was a lot of tea and drama going on in this one, which made it fun. Along with, of course, all the internal conflict. So that is This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. And then there is a third book, the last in the series. I cannot wait for this to come out. Can't get enough. Look at how bold and audacious and gorgeous that is. So that follows, this is going to be following the storyline for Hendrix, the third person in the friend group. Hendrix is the one who's always... This one's going to be really interesting, I think, because Hendrix is the one who's like kind of the wild child archetype. She's the one that always says what she's thinking, that's always, upbeat and funny and wisecracking, but also telling it like it is. And she's very, very secure in her life. She knows her worth. She is very self-sufficient. Actually, I think as far as financially, she's far better off financially than the other 2 characters, at least at the beginning of their stories. So it's going to be, I'm really curious to see who the match for her is going to be. And that's coming out in May. So I've already got my holds, all my holds going on the library. The other thing I just want to say about the series so far is I would say that the themes that really tie these stories together and make them so powerful is that they both deal, I think the primary theme with both stories so far is how do you come back from a terrible loss? In Yasmin's case, it was an actual loss. For both Yasmin and Josiah, it was an actual loss. And for Soledad, it was a loss of relationship and partnership. And how do you come back from that? Because those are real devastating things that most of us have to deal with at some point. I'd say probably all of us have to deal with at some point. And how do you come back from that? I think that is a really enduring question. How do you come back whole from something that just takes out a chunk of your heart and messes with your psyche so much? So that is, I guess, where I want to leave my talking about the Skyland series by Kennedy Ryan. Amazing stories. I highly recommend them. Just she does have trigger warnings, I think, in the beginning of both books. So check those beforehand before diving in, because there are some heavy topics in both books. All right, that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you have read this series and what your thoughts are. And remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.